My name is Wendy Dixon. I am 32 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I stood in a room full of people who thought they knew my family and realized none of them knew me at all. It happened at my parents' 40th wedding anniversary dinner. 30 guests. White tablecloths. Polished glasses. The kind of night my mother had been planning for months. I had been there since early morning. Of course. I always was. Setting up. Coordinating with the caterer. Making sure everything looked perfect so she could take credit for it later. By the time the first guests arrived, the house looked like something out of a magazine. Candles lit. Plates aligned. Flowers exactly where my mother wanted them. And me? I changed into a simple black dress and stayed near the kitchen like I always did. That's my role in the Dixon family. Not daughter. Not guest. Just available. If you walked into that house, you'd understand the hierarchy in about 10 seconds. My parents live in a big white colonial house outside Boston. 4 bedrooms. 2-car garage. Lawn trimmed like someone gets paid to care about it. My father used to be a bank branch manager. Retired now. But still talks like he's in charge of something important. My mother has never had a paid job. But you would think she runs a corporation the way she organizes church events and neighborhood fundraisers. Then there's my sister Megan, 3 years younger. Married to a corporate attorney, whose job title somehow comes up in every conversation. They have 2 kids. A boy and a girl. Both dressed like they belong in a catalog. And they drive a brand new Lexus SUV that always gets the best parking spot in my parents' driveway. My car? A 10-year-old Honda Civic. I don't park in the driveway. I park on the street. Not because there isn't space. Because my mother doesn't like what it says about the family when guests arrive. Move your car. Vende. Derek is coming over. She says it like it's obvious. Like I should already know my place. And the truth is, I do. I've known it for years. You don't notice it all at once. That's the thing. It builds slowly. Small moments that don't seem important on their own. Like how my mother introduces Megan. This is my daughter Megan. Her husband is a partner at Whitmore and Associates. Then she gestures toward me. And this is Wendy. She helps out. Helps out. Not she's an accountant. Not she runs her own clients. Just helps out. I used to correct her. Once. Maybe twice. Then I stopped. Because no one was listening anyway. My work is part-time accounting. Flexible hours. Remote clients. It pays my bills. It's stable. It's real work. But in my family, it doesn't count. Because I don't wear a suit. I don't work in an office downtown. I don't have a husband with a title they can repeat to impress their friends. So, I became the one with time. And when you're the one with time, you become the one everyone uses. Thanksgiving? I show up before sunrise to start cooking. I handle the turkey, the sides, the table setup. Megan arrives around noon, dressed perfectly, sits down, and gets served. Christmas? Same thing. Plus wrapping gifts. Not mine, theirs. Birthday parties? I'm the planner, the host, and the cleanup crew. Last year, I spent 8 hours running my nephew's dinosaur-themed party, while Megan went out to get a manicure because she needed a break. No one asked me if I needed one. They never do. And here's the part that really gets you after a while. It's not that they treat me like I don't matter. It's that they don't even realize they're doing it. To them, this is normal. Of course Wendy will handle it. Of course Wendy will adjust. Of course Wendy will say yes. Because I always have. I remember one time I tried to say no. I had a client deadline. A real one. Something that actually mattered to me. I told my mother I might not be able to come over that weekend. She didn't yell. She just got quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you've already done something wrong. Family comes first. Vende. That was it. No argument. No discussion. Just a statement. And somehow, I ended up canceling my work and showing up anyway. That's how it works. Not force. Not exactly. Expectation. And after enough years, You stop asking yourself if it's fair. You just do what's expected. I think the moment I really understood my role wasn't during a big fight or some dramatic argument. It was something small. I was in my parents' kitchen, late at night, washing dishes after another family dinner. Everyone else had already left the table, laughter still echoing from the living room. I was scrubbing a pot, and it hit me. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had invited me somewhere without expecting something in return. Not a dinner, not a trip, not even coffee. Every invitation came with a job attached. Help with the kids. Bring something. Stay late. Clean up. Always something. And I stood there, hands in soapy water, realizing I wasn't part of the family the way they were. I was support staff, unpaid, unacknowledged, always available. And the worst part? I had let it happen. Not all at once. Not on purpose. Just one small yes at a time. By the time my parents' anniversary dinner came around, nothing about that dynamic felt unusual anymore. Of course, I took days off work to help prepare. Of course, I coordinated everything behind the scenes. Of course, I stayed near the kitchen while everyone else enjoyed the party. That was my place. That's what I did. And if you had asked me that morning if something was wrong, I probably would have said no. Because when something has been happening your whole life, it doesn't feel like a problem. It just feels normal. Until the moment it doesn't. Until the moment someone says something so clear, so undeniable, that you can't pretend anymore. That night was that moment. But at the time, standing there in that black dress, watching my family laugh with people who thought we were perfect, I hadn't reached that point yet. Not fully. I was still doing what I always did. Smiling when I was supposed to. Helping when I was needed. Staying just out of the spotlight. Invisible. Exactly where they expected me to be. I remember the first time I realized it wasn't just a one-time thing. It was Thanksgiving. I got there before the sun came up. Because my mother said the turkey needs attention. That was her way of saying she didn't want to deal with it. I let myself in, tied on an apron, and got to work like I always did. By 8 in the morning, I had the turkey prepped, the sides planned out, the table half set. But then, I was juggling oven space like it was a full-time job. By noon, the house smelled like a holiday, and I hadn't sat down once. Megan showed up around 12:30. Perfect hair, perfect outfit, not a wrinkle anywhere. She walked in like a guest, kissed Mom on the cheek, hugged Dad, gave me a quick hey as she passed through the kitchen. Then she sat down. That's it. She didn't ask if I needed help. She didn't even ask what I'd been doing all morning. She just assumed everything was handled, and it was, because I handled it. Dinner went exactly the way my mother wanted. Plates came out hot. Timing was perfect. Everyone complimented the food. You outdid yourself again. One of my mom's friends said. My mother smiled like she'd cooked every dish herself. I was still standing in the kitchen doorway, holding a serving spoon, listening to someone else take credit for work I'd been doing since sunrise. No one corrected it. Not even me. After dinner, people moved to the living room. Wine glasses refilled. Football on the TV. Laughter. Conversations. The kind of warm holiday scene you see in commercials. And me? I was back in the kitchen, scraping plates, loading the dishwasher, wrapping leftovers into containers. My mother would later give away like she prepared them herself. At one point, I heard Megan laughing in the living room. Wendy's always been so good at this stuff, she said, like I wasn't 10 feet away, elbow deep in dirty dishes, like I was part of the service, not the conversation. That should have bothered me more than it did. But at that point, it just felt expected. Christmas wasn't any different. Actually, it was worse. Because now there were gifts involved. I showed up early again. Of course I did. My mother had a lot to do, which somehow always turned into me doing it. Wrapping presents, labeling them, organizing them under the tree so everything looked balanced. That was her word, balanced. What she meant was Megan's gifts front and center, mine wherever they fit. I wrapped boxes I didn't buy, gifts I didn't choose, For people who wouldn't remember, I was the one who made it all look nice. By the time everyone arrived, I had already worked a full shift. Megan walked in carrying 2 shopping bags and a coffee. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane," she said. Like that excuse not helping with anything. She handed me one of the bags. "Can you wrap these real quick? I ran out of time." Not please. Not thank you. Just, can you? So I did, because that's what I do. Later that night, after dinner, we sat around the tree, opening gifts. I remember exactly what Megan gave me that year. A kitchen apron, bright red, glitter letters across the front, "World's Best Aunt." She smiled like she'd nailed it, like it was thoughtful, and I smiled back, because what else was I supposed to do? Sigh. "Hey, this feels less like a gift and more like a job description?" I wore it. Of course I did. Every time I came over after that. I wore that apron while cooking for them, cleaning for them, taking care of their kids. No one thought that was strange. Not even me. The birthdays were the same pattern. Just louder. More decorations. More planning. More chaos. And somehow, more responsibility for me. Last year, my nephew wanted a dinosaur-themed party. So I planned a dinosaur-themed party. I handled everything. Decorations. Games. Food. Timing. I even dressed up in a ridiculous dinosaur hat because my mom said it would be fun for the kids. I spent 8 hours running that party. 8. Do you know what Megan was doing? She left halfway through to get a manicure. She just needed a break. My mother told me when I asked where she went. A break. From what? She showed up at the end. Nails done. Took pictures with her kids. And posted them online. Like she'd been there the whole time. "Best day ever." Her caption said. I was in the background of one photo. Blurry. Carrying a tray of cupcakes. That's when it really started to sink in. Not as one big realization, but as a pattern I couldn't unsee anymore. Every event. Every holiday. Every gathering. Sam rôle. Same expectations. Same outcome. They enjoyed the moment. I made the moment happen. And no one not once stopped to ask if I wanted something different. It wasn't even about big things. It was the small ones that got to me. Like being handed a list instead of being asked a question. "Oliver can't eat peanuts." "Remember. Sophie needs her nap at 1. Make sure the cake is dairy-free this time." Instructions. Always instructions. Like I was part of the system that kept their lives running smoothly. Not a person with my own life. And the truth is, I let it continue. Because it was easier than pushing back. Easier than dealing with the guilt. Easier than hearing my mother say, "Family comes first." Like it was some kind of rule I wasn't allowed to question. But here's the part that really built up over time. It wasn't just that they needed me. It was that they assumed I had nothing else. No plans. No priorities. No value outside of what I could do for them. "You're flexible." I heard that word more times than I can count. Flexible. Like my life was something that could be bent. Adjusted. Moved around to fit theirs. Like it didn't matter. And after a while, you start to believe it. You start to think maybe they're right. Maybe you are the one with nothing going on. Maybe helping is your role. Maybe that's all you're good for. That's how it works. Not overnight. Not with one big moment. But with repetition. Over and over. Until it becomes normal. Until you stop questioning it. Until one day, you realize you've been living your entire life as a solution to everyone else's problems. And no one, not even you, has been asking what you actually want. I didn't start questioning any of this because of my family. Not at first. It started with Kevin. We had been together for 4 years. Long enough that people stopped asking, "Are you serious?" And started asking, "So when's the wedding?" We talked about it. 2. Not in some dreamy, unrealistic way. Just normal conversations. Where we'd live, whether we wanted kids, what that life would look like. Nothing dramatic, just steady. At least, that's what I thought it was. The night he ended things, there was no big fight. No cheating. No betrayal you could point to and say, "That's why it ended." He asked if we could talk. That should have been my first clue. We were sitting in his apartment. On the couch we picked out together. The same one we used to argue about because I wanted something practical and he wanted something that looked good for guests. He didn't sit close to me. That was the second clue. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together like he was preparing to say something important. And then he said it. I love you, Wendy, but I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. There's a pause after a sentence like that. A weird, quiet gap where your brain tries to catch up with what you just heard. I didn't cry right away. I just stared at him because it didn't make sense. Nothing had changed. We hadn't been fighting. We hadn't drifted apart. At least not in a way I noticed. What do you mean? I asked. And he hesitated. Not because he didn't have an answer, because he knew it was going to hurt. You're just there, he said. That was the exact word. There. You're always there. You're reliable. You're kind. You show up. But it feels like you're just a part of everything, not someone I'm building something with. I remember blinking, trying to process that. Part of everything? I repeated. Like background, he said. And I could tell he regretted saying it. The second it came out, I don't know how to explain it better than that. Background. There it was again. Different word. Same meaning. Invisible. I didn't argue. I didn't yell or throw anything or demand an explanation he couldn't give. I just sat there, feeling like the ground under me had shifted in a way I couldn't fix. Because how do you fight that? How do you prove you're not just there? I asked one question. Is there someone else? He shook his head immediately. No. This isn't about someone else. It's about me realizing I want something different. Something different. That phrase stuck with me. Because I didn't know what different meant. Louder? More demanding? Less available? I didn't ask. I didn't think I wanted the answer. We sat there for a few more minutes, both of us pretending there was something left to say. There wasn't. I gathered my things. My jacket. My bag. The random stuff I had left at his place. He walked me to the door. Of course he did. He was still a good person. That almost made it worse. Wendy, he said, like he wanted to soften it somehow. You're going to be okay. I nodded, because that's what you do. You nod. You say something polite. You leave with your dignity intact. And then you walk out into the cold and realize you don't actually know where to go next. I drove home in silence. No music. No calls. Nothing to fill the space. Just that sentence playing over and over in my head. You're just there. At first, I tried to push it away. People say things they don't mean when they break up. They look for words that explain a feeling they don't fully understand. But the more I thought about it, the more it started to feel accurate. Not just in that relationship, everywhere. At family dinners, at holidays, at birthday parties. I was always there, helping, supporting, filling in whatever gap needed to be filled, but never central. Never the one people planned around. Never the one people asked. What do you want? I was just included when it was convenient, and useful when it was needed. That realization didn't hit all at once. It came in pieces. Small, uncomfortable moments where I'd remember something and see it differently. Like how Kevin never asked me to take the lead on anything. Not because he didn't trust me, but because I never offered. I was easy, low maintenance, always adjusting. And at some point, being easy stopped being a good thing. It made me forgettable. That night, after I got home, I didn't cry right away. I walked into my apartment, dropped my keys on the table, and just stood there, quiet, still, like I was waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. No dramatic breakdown. No sudden clarity. Just silence. Eventually, I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall. And that's when it hit me. Not the breakup itself. The pattern. Kevin didn't see me. My family didn't see me. And the worst part was, I didn't see myself either. I had spent so much time fitting into other people's expectations that I didn't even know what I looked like outside of that. What I wanted. What I cared about. What I would choose if no one was asking me to help. That thought sat with me longer than anything Kevin said. Because breakups happen. People fall out of love. That's life. But realizing you've built your entire identity around being useful to other people? That's different. That stays with you. I didn't have a plan that night. I didn't suddenly decide to change my life. I just knew one thing. I couldn't keep being the person who was just there. Even if I didn't know what came next yet. I didn't wake up the next day with a new personality or a clear plan. That's not how it works. I still went to work. Still answered emails. Still showed up to things I had already said yes to. On the outside, nothing really changed, but something small shifted. Quiet, but real. A few days after the breakup, I found myself walking downtown with no real destination. I wasn't trying to figure things out. I just didn't want to sit in my apartment thinking about everything Kevin said. That's when I ended up in a pawn shop. I don't even remember deciding to go in. I just saw the sign, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. It smelled like old metal and dust. Shelves packed with random things, tools, watches, speakers. Things people had once needed enough to buy and later needed enough to sell. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Then I saw it. A camera, Canon DSLR. Not new, but well kept. It sat in a glass case with a small price tag next to it. $180. I stood there longer than I expected to. I had never been into photography. Not seriously. I took normal pictures like everyone else. Phone photos. Nothing special. But something about that camera felt different. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive. It just looked like something that had been used. Like it had a story already. The guy behind the counter noticed me staring. "You want to see it?" he asked. I hesitated for a second. Then I said yes. He handed it to me. And the weight of it surprised me. Solid. Real. Not like holding a phone. This felt like something you had to pay attention to. I lifted it slightly. Looked through the viewfinder. Everything narrowed. The store. The noise. The clutter. It all faded. And suddenly, there was just one frame. One clear focus. I lowered it. "How much again?" I asked. Even though I already knew. $180. I should have walked away. That money was supposed to go toward bills. Toward something practical. Something responsible. But standing there, holding that camera, I realized something uncomfortable. I had spent years doing what made sense. What was responsible? What was expected? And none of it had made me feel like I existed. So I bought it. No long internal debate. No overthinking. I handed over the money. Took the camera. And walked out with something that was mine. Not something I bought for someone else. Not something I would use to help someone else. Mine. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not my parents. Not Megan. Not even my friends. Because I already knew what they would say. "That's random. Are you actually going to use it? Why would you spend money on that?" I didn't want to explain it. So I didn't. That night, I took my first photo. It wasn't anything impressive. An older woman sitting alone at a bus stop near my apartment. She had a grocery bag at her feet, and her hands folded in her lap. She wasn't looking at her phone. She wasn't doing anything to pass the time. She was just waiting. People walked past her without noticing. Cars drove by. No one stopped. I stood across the street, lifted the camera, and took the shot. One click. That was it. But when I looked at the image later, something felt different. It wasn't just a picture. It was attention. I had seen her, really seen her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had done something that wasn't about being useful. It was about noticing. I started carrying the camera with me everywhere. Not in a big, obvious way. I kept it in my bag, wrapped in an old scarf, so it wouldn't get scratched. And I started taking photos of people most others ignored. A janitor on his break, sitting on a curb at midnight. A woman counting coins at a convenience store, trying to make exact change. A tired waitress leaning against the counter for just a second longer than usual. People who weren't the center of anything. People who blended into the background of everyone else's lives. I didn't stage anything. I didn't interrupt. I just observed. and I kept noticing something. They looked the way I felt. Present, but unseen. Important in ways no one acknowledged. That's when the idea came to me. Not in some big, dramatic moment, just a quiet realization while scrolling through the photos on my laptop. Invisible women. That's what I called it. It wasn't a brand. It wasn't a business. It was just a folder at first. Then it became something more. I created an Instagram account. No personal fotos. No name. No bio that gave anything away. Just the images, onebewan. I posted them. No big captions. Just short, simple lines. She's been here for 40 minutes. End of a 12-hour shift. No one asked if she was okay. I didn't expect anyone to see them. But people did, slowly at first. A few likes. A few comments. Then more. People started responding to the images in ways I didn't expect. I see this woman every day. This feels like my mom. This is me. That last one came up a lot. This is me. The account grew. Not overnight. Not in some viral explosion. Just steady. A few followers turned into a few hundred. Then a few thousand. After 3 years, it reached 12,000. 12,000 people who were paying attention to something I created. Something I saw. Something I understood. And here's the part I never told anyone. I never showed my family. Not once. Because I knew exactly how that conversation would go. That's nice. Vende. Is it making money? You should focus on something stable. So I kept it separate. My life with them. And this other life I was building quietly in the background. The camera stayed hidden in my closet when I wasn't using it. Wrapped in that same old scarf. Like a secret I wasn't ready to explain. But it wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was proof. Proof that I could create something. Proof that I could see something others miss. Proof that I wasn't just in there. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't have a plan to turn it into a career. I didn't even think of myself as an artist. But for the first time in a long time, I had something that belonged to me. Something no one asked me to do. Something no one expected from me. And something no one could take credit for. I didn't realize it yet. But that camera, that small, quiet decision in a pawn shop, was going to change everything. I woke up at 6 in the morning on the day of my parents' anniversary party, and already knew how the day was going to go. Not because anyone told me, because they never had to. The plan had been set a week earlier, which really meant I had been assigned everything without it being called an assignment. Flowers ordered, place cards handwritten, table settings arranged, coordination with the caterer. Last-minute adjustments, my mother insisted on. By the time I got to the house that morning, she was already stressed. Wende, you're here. Good. The peonies came in the wrong shade. So we need to move them to the side tables. And the seating chart needs to be redone. The Johnsons can't sit next to the Millers. No, good morning. No. Thank you for coming early. Just instructions. I nodded and got to work. That's what I do. The house slowly transformed over the next 10 hours. Candles placed exactly 2 inches from the center. Crystal glasses polished until they caught the light just right. 30 place settings lined up across a table that stretched from the dining room into the living room. It looked perfect. It always does when I'm done with it. At some point in the afternoon, I went upstairs to change. I didn't bring anything flashy. Just a simple black dress. Clean. Fitted. Nothing that would stand out. I wasn't there to stand out. I came back downstairs. And my mother looked me over. That's what you're wearing? It's black. I said, I thought it was appropriate. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. It's fine. Just stay in the background. Today is about your father and me. Of course it was. It always was. Guests started arriving around 7. You could tell immediately what kind of night it was going to be. Men in jackets. Women in dresses that looked expensive without trying too hard. The kind of people who compliment your home before they even take off their coats. I stayed near the kitchen at first, carrying trays, making sure drinks were filled, stepping in wherever something needed to be handled. From a distance, it probably looked like I was part of the catering staff. Honestly, that wasn't far off. Megan arrived 15 minutes late. Not by accident, she always times it that way. Just late enough to make an entrance. Red dress. Perfect hair. Derek behind her in a charcoal suit. Their kids dressed like they belonged in a holiday catalog. My mother lit up when she saw them. "Oh, look at you," she said, pulling Megan into a hug. "You look stunning." Then, louder, for everyone to hear. Everyone. "This is my daughter Megan and her husband Derek. Derek just made partner at Whitmore and Associates last year." Smiles. Nods. A few impressed murmurs. Megan smiled like she'd practiced it. I stood in the doorway holding a tray of appetizers. No introduction needed. I was already understood. A few minutes later, one of the guests walked up to me. "Excuse me," she said, reaching for a crab cake. "Are you with the catering company?" Before I could answer, my mother stepped in. "Oh no," she said with a light laugh. "That's Wendy, my other daughter. She's helping out tonight." Helping out. Again. The woman smiled politely and moved on. Conversation over. At some point, Derek found me. He had Sophie in one arm, and Oliver pulling at his sleeve. "Hey, can you take them?" he said, already shifting his weight like the answer was yes. "Megan and I need to go talk to some people." Not a question. A handoff. I took them. Of course I did. I fed them in the kitchen. Wiped spills. Kept them entertained, so they wouldn't run into the living room and interrupt the adults. By the time I came back out, dessert was already being served. I hadn't eaten anything all day. No one noticed. Around 9. My father stood up and tapped his glass. The room quieted almost instantly. That's the thing about people like my parents. They know how to command attention. "Patricia and I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he said, smiling like he'd rehearsed it. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of building this family. This life. My mother stood beside him, glowing. Megan reached for Derek's hand. I stayed where I was, near the edge of the room, holding an empty plate. "And to celebrate," my father continued, "we have a surprise." That got people's attention. He paused. "Just long enough. Next week, we're taking the whole family to Hawaii. 1 week at the Four Seasons in Maui." The reaction was immediate. "That's amazing. How wonderful. You deserve it." Megan actually squealed. "Dad, that's incredible." I felt something shift in my chest. The whole family. That's what he said. The whole family. For the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine it. A trip where I wasn't working. A trip where I was just included. I took a small step forward. "That sounds amazing," I said. "What time is our flight?" And that's when everything stopped. Not completely, but enough. My father's expression changed. Just slightly. He glanced at my mother, and something passed between them. A look I had seen my entire life, but never fully understood until that moment. "Wendy," he said slowly, like he was choosing his words carefully. "You don't need to know the flight time." I blinked. "I don't understand." He cleared his throat. "Because you're not going." The room went quiet. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where people don't know where to look. "Someone needs to stay behind," my mother added. Like this was obvious. "Megan and Derek need a real vacation. You'll watch the children." 30 people. 30 witnesses. And I was standing there, being reassigned in real time. "But," I started. "Honestly." My mother cut in, her tone sharpening just enough. "You don't have anything important going on?" "Megan works hard. She deserves a break." "Megan works hard." I almost laughed. Derek stepped in, not looking at me. "It's just a week. The kids love you." Of course they do. I'm the one who's always there. I could feel every eye in the room. Some people looked uncomfortable. Most just looked away. One woman leaned toward her husband and whispered something. He nodded. I didn't catch everything. Just one part. Poor thing. Poor thing. I stood there, holding a plate I didn't remember picking up, trying to figure out if this was really happening. If this was how they saw me, not as someone to include, but as someone to assign, and suddenly, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday made sense in a way it never had before. I wasn't overlooked. I was designated. I set the plate down. Carefully. I understand. I said, and I smiled. Because that's what I've always done. I smiled. Even when something inside me cracked in a way that didn't feel fixable. But this time, it was different. This time, I understood something I hadn't fully accepted before. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as convenient. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel hurt. I felt done. I didn't make a scene after that. That's probably what they expected. Or maybe they didn't expect anything at all. Either way, I didn't give them the moment. I smiled, set the plate down, and walked back into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like I had just been given a normal responsibility. Like I agreed. That's the part that still surprises me. Not what they said. What I said, I understand. I kept replaying that in my head while I stood at the sink. Running water over dishes. I didn't remember picking up. The party kept going behind me. Laughter. Glasses clinking. Someone telling a story too loudly. The same people who had just watched me get cut out of a family trip like it was a scheduling decision were now back to enjoying dessert. And I was right back where I always was, cleaning up. At some point, Megan came into the kitchen. Her heels clicked against the tile, and I could feel her before she said anything. "Vendi," she started. Soft voice. Careful tone. "Don't be upset." I kept rinsing a glass. "I'm not," I said. She leaned against the counter. "You know how it is. Derek and I really need this time. It's been a lot with the kids." I nodded, even though she couldn't see my face. Of course. She took that as agreement. "Besides, you're so good with them. They barely even notice when I'm gone." That landed harder than anything she had said earlier. Not because it was cruel, because it was casual, like she genuinely believed that was a compliment. I dried my hands on a towel. "Megan," I said, turning toward her. "Did you ever think to ask me?" She blinked. "Ask you what? If I wanted to stay? If I had plans? If I had anything?" She frowned slightly. Like the question didn't quite make sense. "You're flexible," she said. There it was again. That word, flexible. I almost smiled. "Right," I said. She pulled out her phone. "I made a list for you," she continued. Scrolling. "Oliver's schedule? Sophie's à la guise. There's this new thing with his ear. You might need to give him drops. I'll text it to you." Not can you. Not would you. Just information. Like the decision had already been made. Because it had. Derek stepped into the doorway a second later, loosening his tie. "All set?" he asked. "Yeah," Megan said. "Wendy's got it." Of course she did. I didn't correct her. I didn't argue. I just nodded. And they left the kitchen together. Already moving on to the next conversation. The next laugh. The next part of the night. Like I wasn't part of it. Like I never was. By the time the last guest left, it was almost midnight. My parents had gone upstairs. Tired in that satisfied way people are when everything went exactly how they wanted. The house was quiet. Finally, I was alone in the living room. Folding tablecloths. Stacking plates. Putting things back where they belonged. That's when I remembered I had a client file I needed to send. I had pushed it back for this party. Of course I had. My laptop was at home. My mother's was sitting on the kitchen counter. She wouldn't mind. At least. That's what I told myself. I walked into the kitchen. Opened the laptop. And the screen lit up immediately. Her email was already open. I didn't go looking for anything. I just saw it. My name. Right there in the subject line of a thread. Hawaii arrangements. Wendy situation. My hand froze on the trackpad. I knew I shouldn't click it. I knew whatever was in there wasn't going to make anything better. But I clicked it anyway. The first email was from my mother. "Keep Wendy here to watch the kids. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway." Derek was right. It's like having free help. I read that once. Then again. Slower the second time. Free help. The words didn't feel real at first, like I was reading something about someone else. Then I saw Megan's reply. Totally agree. She'll probably feel useful for once. It's kind of sad, honestly. But at least it works out for us. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the screen. Kind of sad. That's how they saw me. Not angry. Not difficult. Not even worth arguing with. Just sad. Useful. Available. Replaceable. I sat down in the chair without realizing I was doing it. The kitchen suddenly felt different. Sama cabinets. Same counters. Same place I had spent years working in without question. But now it looked like something else. Not a home. A workspace. And I wasn't a daughter in it. I was staff. I scrolled back through the thread. More messages. Logistics. Timing. Travel details. All planned out. All decided. Without me. About me. Like I was a line item. Like I was something to manage. I reached for my phone. Not to call anyone. To take pictures? Screenshot after screenshot. Proof. I didn't know why I needed it yet, but I knew I did. I emailed them to myself. Deleted the sent message. Cleared the history. All small, quiet movements. The kind you make when something inside you has already shifted. Even if you haven't said it out loud yet. Then I just sat there. In the dark kitchen. In the house I grew up in. And I let it settle. Not the hurt. That part was already there. The clarity. Because this wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't me wondering if I was overreacting. Or if I had misunderstood something. It was simple. They didn't forget about me. They didn't overlook me. They made a decision. And I was never part of it. I stood up slowly. Closed the laptop. And looked around one more time. At the counters I had cleaned. The table I had set. The space I had spent years maintaining. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. This was never my place. I just worked here. I grabbed my keys and walked out without turning on the lights. The night air felt colder than it should have. Or maybe I just noticed it more. I got in my car, sat there for a second, and let one thought settle into place. Not emotional, not dramatic, just certain. They think I'm free help. And for the first time in my life, I realized something that changed everything. Free help can quit. I sat in my car for a long minute with the engine off. The screenshot still open on my phone. The words, free help, burned into my brain in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt clear. For the first time, there was no confusion about where I stood in that family. And once you see something that clearly, you can't unsee it. I drove home in silence. No music. No distractions. Just that quiet, steady realization settling in. My apartment looked the same as always when I walked in. Small. Simple. A little outdated. My mother had called it depressing once. Like it was something I should fix. But standing there that night, it didn't feel depressing. It felt like the only place that actually belonged to me. I dropped my keys on the counter and sat on the couch without turning on the lights. My phone lit up in my hand. Messages from Megan. A list of instructions. Oliver's schedule. Sophie's alagis. Reminders about bedtime. Medication. Snacks. She had already assumed I said yes. I stared at the messages, then locked my phone and set it down. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked it back up a few seconds later and scrolled to one name. Ruth. I hadn't planned to call her. It was late. Past midnight. But she was the only person I knew who might actually understand what I was feeling without trying to explain it away. She answered on the second ring. Wendy, is everything okay? That was the first question anyone had asked me all day. Not, can you do this? Not, are you available? Just, are you okay? I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until my voice caught when I tried to answer. I don't think so, I said. There was no rush on her end. No interruption. Just quiet space for me to talk. So I did. I told her everything. The party. The announcement. The way they said it in front of everyone like it was normal. The email. The words. Free help. I read that part out loud. There was a pause on the line. Not the kind that feels awkward. The kind that feels steady. Then she said something simple. That's not how family is supposed to work. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I know, I said. I didn't want to see it before. That doesn't make it your fault, she said. I leaned back into the couch, staring at the ceiling. I don't think I can stay here, I said. The words surprised me a little, not because they weren't true, because I had never said them out loud before. She didn't hesitate. Then don't. I blinked. It's not that easy. Yes, it is, she said calmly. It's just not comfortable. That landed, because she was right. It wasn't complicated. It was just hard. I don't even know where I would go. I said, You come here? She said immediately. I have a spare room above the cafe. You can stay as long as you need. I sat up. Ruth, I can't just... Yes, you can. She cut in. Still calm. You have a car? You don't have a lease tying you down. You don't have a job you can't leave. You've built your entire life around being available for people who don't value you. She paused. You can build something else? Something else. I looked around my apartment. At the furniture I bought secondhand. The small kitchen. The quiet space that had felt like enough until it didn't. What would I even do there? I asked. You figure it out? She said. You work at the cafe in the mornings if you want. The rest of the time is yours. Mine. That word felt unfamiliar. You've been taking care of everyone else for years. She continued. Maybe it's time you take care of yourself? I didn't answer right away. Not because I disagreed. Because I was trying to picture it. A life where I wasn't the backup plan. A life where no one expected me to drop everything. A life where I chose what I did with my time. It felt possible. And that scared me more than anything. When? I asked. Whenever you're ready, she said. I looked at the clock. Almost 2 a.m. I didn't feel tired. I felt awake. Tomorrow, I said. There was a small smile in her voice. Then I'll have the room ready. We hung up a few minutes later. I sat there for a second, letting the silence settle again. But it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like space. I stood up, walked into my bedroom, and opened my closet. I didn't overthink it. I didn't make a list. I just started packing. Clothes first. Practical things. Then shoes. Then the small personal stuff that mattered more than I expected once I started putting it in a suitcase. My hands moved quickly. Not rushed. Just certain. At some point, I pulled out the scarf at the back of the closet. The one wrapped around my camera. I held it for a second before placing it carefully in a separate bag. That was coming with me. No question. By the time the sun started coming up, I had 3 suitcases lined up by the door. Everything else stayed. The couch. The dishes. The little things that made the apartment feel like a place I had lived in but never really owned. I wrote a short note for my landlord. Month-to-month lease. Paid through the end of the month. No complications. Clean break. I took one last look around. Not emotional. Just final. Then I picked up my keys, loaded the car, and got in. For a second, I sat there with my hands on the wheel. Looking straight ahead, Boston looked the same. Same street. Same buildings. Same life waiting for me to step back into it. I didn't look back. I started the engine and drove. No announcement. No explanation. No permission. Just a choice. For the first time in my life, I wasn't staying because someone needed me. I was leaving because I finally needed something for myself. I crossed into California late in the afternoon. The sky opening up in a way that made everything feel bigger than it had back east. I rolled the window down and let the air hit my face. It smelled different. Cleaner. Saltier. Real. I didn't turn the music on. I just drove. Watching the ocean stretch out beside me, like something that didn't care who I used to be. By the time I reached Carmel, the sun was starting to drop. The town looked exactly like something you'd see on a postcard. Small streets. Soft light. Buildings that didn't feel rushed or loud. Nothing about it felt like the life I had just left. And for the first time in days, I felt something close to calm. I pulled up in front of the cafe. The ceramic cup, hand-painted sign, blue shutters, window boxes full of flowers that looked like someone actually took care of them. Ruth was standing on the porch waiting. She didn't wave. She just walked straight toward me and pulled me into a hug. No questions, no judgment, just presence. "Welcome home," she said. I didn't correct her, because somehow it felt right. The room above the cafe was small but bright. A bill, a desk, a window that looked out toward the ocean. Nothing fancy, but it was quiet, and it was mine. The next morning started at 6. Ruth handed me an apron, simple canvas, nothing flashy, and showed me how to make pour-over coffee. "Take your time," she said. "People come here to slow down, not rush." That alone felt like a different world. Back home, everything was about efficiency, timing, doing things right so someone else could enjoy them. Here, people stood at the counter and talked. They asked my name. They looked at me when I answered. Not because they needed something from me, just because I was there. The first few days felt strange. Not bad, just unfamiliar. No one handed me a list. No one assumed my time belonged to them. When my shift ended at noon, Ruth just said, "The rest of the day is yours." That sentence stayed with me. The rest of the day is yours? I didn't even know what to do with that at first. So I did the only thing that felt natural. I picked up my camera. I started walking. The light in Carmel was different. Softer. More forgiving. People moved slower. They noticed things. Or maybe I just noticed them more. I photographed the same way I always had. Quietly. Without interrupting. A woman reading alone on a bench by the water. An older man painting near the cliffs. Completely focused. Like nothing else existed. A waitress stepping outside for a quick break. Closing her eyes for just a second longer than usual. Same patterns. Different place. But something had changed. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't sneaking moments between responsibilities. This time, I was choosing it. A few days later, I got a message from Marcus. We had exchanged emails before I left Boston. But I hadn't followed through. Not because I wasn't interested, because I didn't think it was real. Now, it felt different. He asked if I could come by the gallery. I said yes. No hesitation. The gallery was only a few blocks away. Clean white walls. Natural light. Quiet in a way that made you pay attention. Marcus met me at the door. He wasn't what I expected. No sweet. No attitude. Just a guy in a linen shirt who looked like he had spent more time thinking about art than business. "Vende," he said, shaking my hand. "I'm glad you came." He didn't rush into anything. He walked me through the space first, showed me the work on the walls, talked about the artists like they mattered. Then he stopped in front of a screen. "My photos. Your series," he said. "Invisible women." Hearing someone else say it out loud felt different. "This one," he said, pointing. "The bus stop. The first photo I ever took. She's been here for 40 minutes. I said quietly. He nodded. "You see people," he said. "That's rare." I didn't respond. I wasn't used to being described that way. "I want to offer you something," he continued. He didn't build it up, didn't make it dramatic. Just said it. "A solo exhibition." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what? 15 pieces? 6 weeks from now. We handle printing, framing, marketing. You keep 60% of the sales." He said it like it was normal, like this was something that happened every day. I stood there for a second, trying to process it. "You're serious?" I said, "Completely." I thought about Boston, about my family, about every time someone had dismissed what I did as nothing important, and now this. A gallery, an exhibition, people paying to see my work. I don't even know what to say. I admitted, "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just decide." That was new. No pressure, no expectation, just a choice. I looked at the photos again, at the faces I had captured, people no one else noticed. And for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't invisible to everyone, just to the wrong people. "I'll do it," I said. He smiled. Good. We sat down at his desk and went through the details. The contract was simple, clear. No hidden conditions. No vague expectations. Just terms. 15 photographs. Opening night scheduled. My name printed at the top. Artist, Wendy Dixon. I stared at that line longer than I expected. Not because it was complicated, because it was the first time I had seen my name attached to something that mattered to me. Not something I did for someone else. Something I built. I signed it. He signed it. And just like that, it was real. When I walked out of the gallery, the air felt different. Not because anything around me had changed. Because I wasn't just the person who helped anymore. I wasn't just the one who showed up when needed. I was building something. Something that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Something that had value. Real value. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just reacting to my life. I was moving forward in it. I was halfway through explaining one of my photos to a couple from San Jose when the front door opened and the temperature in the room dropped. I didn't feel it right away. I saw it. The way a few heads turned at once. The way the conversation near the entrance slowed just a little. That subtle shift people make when something doesn't quite fit the setting. I followed their eyes. And there they were. Megan and Derek, still a little sunburned. Like Hawaii hadn't worn off yet. Megan in a floral dress that felt too casual for the room. Derek already scanning the space like he was evaluating it instead of experiencing it. For a second, I just stood there, not frozen, just aware of where I was, of what this night meant, and of exactly who had just walked into it. Megan saw me first. Wendy. Her voice cut through the room like nothing had happened between us. Like we had just run into each other at a grocery store. She walked toward me fast. Arms open. Smiling wide. I didn't step forward. I didn't step back. I just stood there. She hugged me anyway. We've been so worried about you, she said, pulling back. Hands still on my arms like she was checking if I was real. You disappeared? I kept my voice even. I moved. She laughed lightly. Like that was an overreaction. I mean, we figured that out, she said. But you didn't tell anyone where you went? I glanced past her at Derek. He gave me a small nod. Nice setup. He said, didn't expect all this? Of course he didn't. Megan finally looked around. Really looked. At the walls. At the people. At the small red dots next to a few of the frames. You did this? She asked. Yes. Her expression shifted. Not pride. Confusion. Since when do you do this? Since 3 years ago. I said. You never asked? She opened her mouth. Then closed it. That was new. Megan not having a response. Wendy, she said, lowering her voice. Can we talk for a second? We're talking. She glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the attention starting to gather. Privately. Before I could answer, Derek stepped in. We flew in yesterday, he said. Your mom found your account online. She's been trying to reach you. I felt something tighten slightly in my chest. Not fear, just recognition. Of course she had. And? I asked. Megan stepped closer. I have news, she said quickly. I'm pregnant again. I nodded. Congratulations. She smiled. Relieved for half a second. Like she thought that solved something. And I really need you to come home, she added. There it was. Not, we missed you. Not, we're proud of you. Just need, always need. Derek's schedule is crazy, she continued. Mom isn't great with the kids. And Megan, I said, cutting her off. She stopped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I'm in the middle of my opening night. I know, she said quickly. And this is great. Really? But we can talk about this later. I just need to know when you're coming back. Coming back, like I had taken a short trip, like I had stepped out of my role for a moment and would return to it. Something in me went completely still. Wendy's not coming back? Ruth's voice came from my left. Calm. Firm. She stepped beside me. Not aggressive. Just present. Megan's expression tightened. With all due respect, Derek said, "This is family business." Ruth smiled slightly. "You mean the part where you planned a trip and left her behind to babysit?" Megan's face went pale. "That's not—" "And called her free help in an email?" Ruth added. Silence. Real silence this time. The kind that spreads. I could feel people around us starting to listen more closely. Megan looked at me. "You saw that?" I held her gaze. "Yes." She took a step back. "That's not how we meant it," she said quickly. "You're taking it out of context." "Then explain the context," a voice said from behind her. We all turned. The woman who had bought my bus stop photo earlier stood there, holding a glass of champagne, calm, interested, waiting. Megan hesitated. Derek stepped forward. "This is being blown out of proportion," he said. "Families help each other. That's normal." I looked at him. "For free?" I asked. He didn't answer. I took a small step forward. "Not dramatic. Just enough." "For years?" I continued. Without being asked, Megan's eyes filled slightly. "Vendu. We thought you liked helping." That almost made me laugh. "You didn't think about it at all?" I said. The room had gone quiet again. I could feel it. Every conversation paused just enough. Every glance shifting toward us. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone. My hand didn't shake. "Not anymore." "You want context?" I said. Megan's expression changed. "Vendu." I didn't stop. I opened the screenshots, held the phone up just enough to read clearly. "Keep Wendy here to watch the kids. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway. It's like having free help." My voice stayed steady. No anger. Just facts. I scrolled. "She'll probably feel useful for once. It's kind of sad." Honestly, Megan looked like she had been hit. Derek's jaw tightened. No one spoke. No one interrupted. I lowered the phone. "I'm not reading this to embarrass you," I said. "I meant that I'm reading it so you understand why I left." I gestured around the room. "This is my work." I said, "I've been building this for 3 years. While all of you assumed I had nothing going on." I pointed toward the wall. "That piece sold for $3,000. I added, 4 pieces sold tonight already." I let that sit, not to impress them. To make it real, my time has value. I said, "I have value." Megan wiped her eyes. "Vendy. We didn't—" "I know." I said, and I did. They didn't mean to hurt me. They just never thought about me at all. That's the problem. Derek exhaled sharply. "This is a scene," he muttered. "No," I said calmly. "This is a boundary." That landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't emotional. It wasn't reactive. It was final. I looked at Megan. "I hope your pregnancy goes well." I said, "I really do." Her shoulders dropped slightly. Relief mixed with something else. "But I'm not coming back to be your childcare." I finished. Silence. No arguments. No negotiation. Just the truth. I stepped back. Not away from them. Back into my space. My gallery. My life. And for the first time, I wasn't the one standing on the edge of the room. They were. I didn't chase them when they left. I didn't stand there hoping they'd turn around, apologize, or suddenly understand everything I had just said. I just let them go. The door closed. And the room stayed quiet for a second longer than usual. Like everyone needed a moment to process what just happened. Then Marcus started clapping. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady. Ruth joined him. Then the woman who bought my first piece raised her glass slightly and nodded in my direction. On everyone. The rest of the room followed. Not for the scene. From me, that was new. I didn't smile right away. I just stood there, letting it settle. Because for the first time, the attention wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't something I needed to shrink away from. It felt earned. Marcus walked over and handed me another glass of champagne. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I've seen a lot of opening nights. This one's going to be remembered." I let out a small breath. "Good or bad?" I asked. He smiled. "Depends on who you ask. But for you, this is exactly what needed to happen." I nodded, because deep down, I knew he was right. The rest of the night didn't fall apart the way I thought it might. It actually moved forward. People kept walking through the gallery. They looked at the photos more closely now. They asked questions. Not polite ones. Realones. How long have you been working on this? What made you choose this subject? Do you have more in this series? I answered every single one. Clearly. Honestly. Without downplaying it. Without redirecting the credit. Without making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. By the time the night ended, 8 of the 15 pieces were sold. 8. $14,000 in total. 60% of that went to me. $8,400. I stared at the number on the printout Marcus handed me. Not because it was life-changing money, but because it was proof. Proof that something I created had value. Real value. The kind no one could dismiss. The kind no one could take away. Ruth helped me carry the remaining pieces back upstairs. She didn't say much at first. She just set them down carefully, like they mattered. Then she looked at me. "You okay?" she asked. I thought about it for a second, not automatically saying yes, not brushing it off, actually checking. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think I am." She nodded. "Good, because that was a lot." I let out a small laugh. "Yeah, it was." She leaned against the doorframe. "You didn't just stand up to them," she said. "You changed the terms?" That stuck with me. Not "you won." Not "you proved them wrong." You changed the terms, because that's what it really was. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't get revenge. I just stopped playing the role they had written for me. And suddenly, everything had to adjust around that. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. Megan texted me after the baby was born. "Ah, girl." She sent a picture. I replied, "Congratulations. She's beautiful." That was it. No guilt. No pressure. Just appropriate distance. My mother called once. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice sounded controlled, like she was trying to keep things in place. "You've made your point. Venda. I think it's time you come back." I deleted it, because that wasn't the point. My father surprised me. He sent an email. Short. 3 sentences. "I saw the article. I'm proud of you." I read it twice. Then I saved it, because it was the first time he had ever said something like that without attaching an expectation to it. That mattered. Not enough to undo everything, but enough to acknowledge. My life settled into something new after that. Simple. Structured. Mine. Mornings at the cafe. Afternoons with my camera. Evenings. Editing. Planning. Building something that felt real. Marcus scheduled another exhibition. Different theme. Same honesty. The magazine feature came out the next month. My face on the cover. My name printed in a way that didn't reduce me to "she helps out." People reached out. Not to ask for favors. To share their own stories. I felt like this. I didn't know how to leave. Seeing this made me think differently. That was the part I didn't expect. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what the story meant. What it showed. I still talk to my family. Just differently. No more last-minute demands. No more automatic yes. No more being available just because they assume I am. If they want to be part of my life, it has to be as equals, not as people assigning roles. And if that doesn't work for them, that's okay. Because I finally understand something I didn't before. Being needed is not the same as being valued. I used to think if I just did enough, showed up enough, gave enough, they would see me. They didn't. Not because I wasn't worth seeing, because they never had to look. And the moment I stopped making myself available, they had to face that. Not everyone will like your boundaries. Some people will call it selfish. Some will say you've changed. They're right. You have, because you finally decided your time, your energy, your life has value, not based on what you do for others, but because it's yours. That's the part I want you to remember. If you see yourself in any part of this story, pay attention to that feeling. The one that tells you something isn't right. The one you've been ignoring, because it's easier to keep the peace. You don't have to explode your life overnight. You don't have to make a scene. But you do have to be honest with yourself. about what you're giving and what you're getting back? Because at some point, you have to ask a simple question. Are you part of the family? Or are you just the one who keeps it running? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's not the problem. That's the beginning of your way out.